fully and completely to the questions and to the calls of poetry and to the calls of art. And hence we'll begin. I'm assuming you're ready to begin. And without any further ado, we'll begin with learning a little bit more about getting arts into our classrooms, into our teaching, and learning a little bit more about the journey of Slam Out Loud. All right, I'll share my screen with you. Yeah, all right. First of all, I want to begin by sharing the story of two very, very special people in my life. They are Supriya and Suraj. Supriya lives in the Ayanagar community in Delhi. Suraj lives in Batola, and both of them go to government schools in Delhi. And their lives bring us questioning and face to face with thoughts about power and privilege. And if you were in a lot of communities asked to think about what do the future of children coming from here can look like, unfortunately, a lot of times your responses would be correct. But not in the cases of Supriya and Suraj. Supriya and Suraj have both been amazing TEDx speakers. They've performed to a cumulative audience of more than 25,000 people. They were just 2 weekends ago in Mumbai performing at the Spoken Fest to a crowd of about 10,000 people. Both of them use the tool of spoken word poetry to raise their voice, talk about issues that are important to them and us as people. And they harness the magic of the arts every day in their lives to even solve daily problems or listen deeply to others, observe more, raise their voice sometimes even for other people, and find situations where they can work together more and more with people. They exploit their creativity to make their voice heard. So that is about Supriya and Suraj. At Slam Out Loud, we say that individuals everywhere will have a voice that empowers them to change lives. And hence, voice at Slam Out Loud is something that's very, very important to us. It's at the center of everything that we do. That even though we are living in times when our dreams, especially for children from low-income communities, I'm getting some messages chat in between. I can't access it as much.
Jigyasa?
Yeah.
I don't think there are any messages, but...
Okay. Yeah. Oh, nothing. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Feel free to step in, okay? Because I can't figure out the chat right now.
Sure. Will do, yeah.
Yeah. And we believe that even though we are living in times when our dreams for children from low-income communities are very constricted to dreams about security of employment or dreams about at best academic success, but something as fundamental as knowing who we are deep inside, finding our voice should not be restricted to a privileged class. And that is why Slam Out Loud exists, to bring the power of voice, to bring the magic of what it means to be and have a voice to all children, irrespective of where they're coming from. And how do we do this? We do this using the magic of the arts. And towards what end? So quickly want to hear what is the role that these skills have played in your life. You can unmute yourselves, speak to the screen, like put yourself on video. But there are some skills that you see on the screen: creativity, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, self-esteem. And what do you think is the role of these skills in our lives, or especially in your life? You can unmute yourself. Yeah. Whatever way you want to share.
Hi Jigyasa. So the answer to your question, I would say collaboration has played an integral role for me to form really deep friendships throughout school and college. Communication has played a very important role in how I was able to communicate my ideas or even understand someone else's point of view. And self-esteem was, of course, important throughout school and college, because that's where you're trying to find yourself and trying to figure out life. So self-esteem played played an important role there as well.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
Jigyasa, there is a response by Vedavali school teachers, and they've written it builds self-confidence.
Absolutely. There's another response also: creativity, find myself, critical thinking, to be honest with myself. Yeah, I'm hearing someone else come up.
Feel free to type in your responses as well as speak over the mic.
Speak to you, or I'll have to type simultaneously.
All right, so we'll move to the next question. We all agree that these skills are very, very important, and these are skills which are needed to succeed in life beyond academics. These are skills which are needed to become better individuals, better versions of ourselves, and succeed not only in terms of employment in life, but other bigger outcomes also towards life, which is having a healthy family, healthy relationships, contributing positively to the society. And hence the second question about what do you think are some different ways to build these skills in children?
I would like to speak. I think first comes, the really, they need confidence to come out of their zone, because all their life they've been taught that you can't do this thing or this is not important. So one of the ways I think which is important is theater. Through theater, one can come up with a lot of first of all confidence, and of course a learning experience, because if you read a play, you get to know a lot about that particular era, and then you perform it. So it's also understanding academically that you're gaining something, and also performing it, so that you're a lot of skills. And plus there is teamwork, because a play or a theatrical performance cannot be done without a larger team. So I think one of the ways would be theater.
Thank you for sharing. I also see some responses which have been typed out in the chat. They say these skills can be built through real world projects, simulations, through dramatization, storytelling activities, storytelling, painting, acknowledgement, appreciation, in class activities also build these skills. What else do you think build these skills in children? Creating a learning environment, platform for trial and error, absolutely. All right, so we all agree that these skills are important through play, absolutely. And we all agree that these skills are important, and there are many, many ways to build these skills in children. Just getting. And at Slam Out Loud, we also believe that there are many ways that these skills can be built in children. We decided that we want to build these skills in children using arts. And using different performance arts like theater, storytelling, visual arts, and even spoken word poetry. Now, what exactly we do is, one, we bring an access to arts and artistic opportunities to the child. And hence a child being in a community like in a learning center or in a school starts interacting with these art forms like I shared before, storytelling, spoken word poetry, theater, and visual arts. And through these art forms, the child begins to develop what we call the life relevant skills. So some of the skills that you saw on the last page, critical thinking, communication, creativity, collaboration, are called the life relevant skills, which are really, really important to get bigger outcomes in life. We also try to develop something called the socio-emotional learning in children, using the arts as a tool to build them. And we believe that all of this contributes towards the children developing and finding their own voice, understanding their own center. Hello? Okay, somebody just unmuted. Okay, understanding their own center, understanding their own beliefs, ideas, passions, and using these art forms to find a voice, they can then create better life outcomes for themselves and others. So not only are the children able to break the cycle of negative outcomes every day by practicing an art form, but they're also able to break that cycle of negative outcomes for others, because arts, when it is created at a level where it touches other people, it's also able to make them imagine what is possible instead of what is. So arts is a very powerful tool, because right from the beginning of when you start working with the arts, you're creating. And creating is working at the highest level. Even when we study Bloom's taxonomy in pedagogy, we call creativity or creating the highest level. And with arts, you directly start with creating. And hence, we use the creativity and the other skills that come through the arts for children to develop their voice, which we believe will enable them to empower themselves to break the cycle of negative outcomes, not just for themselves, but also for more other people around them. I also see a few more responses on how we can build these skills as children. Of course, we can build them through sports, through play, and through exposure and recognizing personal strengths, even among the odds. Absolutely. Agree with all of you. So I'll quickly share about one of the programs that we have at Slam Out Loud. It's called the Jijivisha Fellowship. What we do is we get some of the best artists to join us and then enter classrooms, because artists are people who are really, really passionate about their art. You can see in the picture, there's Shalini, who's a very passionate storyteller. And we select these artists coming from different backgrounds, like from National School of Drama. They are previous Young India or Teach for India fellows, and this uniquely positions them to be role models in the lives of our children, who can think about even having arts as a suitable career, even thinking of a career which is beyond what has been already told to them. And the idea with this program is that it's a 5-year-long intervention, and it has a relay model of one artist every year, which means that for 5 years, the children will work with different art forms, but every year a new artist will enter the class and work with them using a new art form. What we strive to do at Slam Out Loud is to make this contextual. So we root the arts program completely based on the needs of the particular school community. It's a direct impact model, because we work with the same kids for 5 years, year and year, and we monitor and evaluate our children on how they are growing in life skills. And at the end of every year, the children get an opportunity to showcase what they've learned through a showcase, which is a showcase of theatre, them performing spoken word poems, them even putting the presentation on an exhibition of their paintings. The other project that we do, and is especially a project meant for scale, is called Voice for All. What we're trying to develop in this is e-learning resources which can be accessible even to children sitting in remote areas of the country. And how many schools are we currently working with? For the Jijivisha Fellowship, we're working with about 30 learning centers in Delhi. And we are just about to begin some work in Kashmir from this April onwards. The number of schools for Kashmir is not yet decided. Now coming to Voice for All, to make the access of at least the performing arts reachable for children, especially sitting in remote areas, but having access to, let's say, a mobile or internet, we've created e-learning resources for art forms, again, storytelling, theatre, spoken word, poetry, which the children can use themselves, learn in a way of self-directed learning, and get to learn the basics of an art form. We're doing this in collaboration with Pratham, and we are yet to roll out our first batch, which will happen soon in the next 10 days. And children, even in the remotest areas of the country, can use these interactive e-learning resources to learn things like voice modulation, to learn things like how to create plays in groups, go out, make their own videos of doing theater performances. And the idea is for children to have a platform for sharing a lot of content with each other. If we think about how our children are consuming a lot of content that we give to them day in and day out, the idea of this platform is for children to become content creators and create their own stories and theater plays and shoot them and put them on the app and share them with the world. So that's the idea behind our project called Voice for All. After this, what we're also planning to do is to create opportunities within villages for children to then come together and showcase their learning. So that's majorly about Slam Out Loud and Jijivisha Fellowship and the Voice Project. And now we'll get to the real juicy part of our webinar today, which is creating a poem in my own voice, creating a poem together. How do you feel about this? I would love to hear some responses, one word, a phrase, anything at all. You're feeling unprepared to create a poem, okay? Okay, Reena is feeling innovative and creative. Okay, one school wants to voice out their individuality. One, okay, somebody is feeling emotional, excited. I see a range of emotions. Inquisitive, somebody is feeling inhibited. So we'll try and open up your inhibitions through the workshop. All right, excellent. That seems we have people who are ready to take on the workshop, and so am I. And hence we'll work on creating a poem in our own voice. Ready? I think so. All right. The first step to creating a poem is to choose one of the words that you want to write the poem about. Take the next 20 seconds, choose a word, and it would be lovely if you can also share the word with us in the chat, or you can share the word, in person in your own voice. And ideally, write the word down on the notebook that you've been given. I see Ekta Prerna helping me in the chat box.
Yeah. Ekta here, yeah. I'm just trying to type and make the instructions a little explicit. Is it just one word that you have to choose?
Yes. It's written on the slide. Yes. Right. Just one word.
Thanks.
And just choose it and write it down. If you like, you can also share it in the chat box. Okay, Sarabjeet has chosen fly. Aishwarya has chosen sky. Very interesting. Oh, the list is on your screen. Answers. Bird, strength, rise. I hear. Yeah, the words are, yeah, there are a lot of words on the list. Courage, imagination, beyond.
Snow.
Okay, snow. You have to choose words from the list given on the screen. I don't think snow is on the screen.
Trees.
Okay. Excellent. All right, we'll move to the next stage. I hope all of you have chosen the words that you want to write your poem with, and we'll move on to the next stage. Now, for your first line, you have to attach an is or are or means to your word, right? So, for example, I would take the word hope and I would attach an is to it, right? So if you've taken the word dream, it will become dream is. If you've taken the word courage, it will become courage is. If you've taken the word inspiration, you can write inspiration is. If you want to not take any word from the list but choose your own word, that's also all right. We will not have a lot of rules in this one. And just use your word and put is to it. When you're done, give me a snap. So if I can hear you, or if you can tell me done on the chat, I will know. So you just put the word and attach an is to it. A lot of dones. Okay, a lot of people have done their poem. I'll wait for a couple of more and then I'll talk about the next thing. All right, perfect. Now we'll think of a color for our word. If you had to think of a color that brings your word alive, what would that be? So, for example, my word is hope. And I think a lot of colors do bring hope alive. What do you think? What are some colors that bring hope alive for you? Yellow, okay, blue, white, green, yellow, blue. Perfect. So all of us have different ideas about what words bring our words alive. We'll choose one for our own poem. What is a color that brings your word alive? The word that you've chosen for your poem, right? And what do we do?
Green.
Okay, green. Yeah.
Sorry, Raka, can I request you after you've spoken to mute yourself as well? Because sometimes we hear a lot of background noise. So after you've given your response, do mute yourself. Yeah. Thank you so much. Sorry, Jigyasa. Please continue.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry. And now we'll start thinking about an object for our word, right? A lot of you suggested that I choose the color yellow for hope, and I did. And now we'll think about what is something which is very, very yellow. And I chose sunshine. Similarly, you will choose for your poem or for your word what is something that brings your word alive, or what is an object that is full of the color you've chosen. And for this, can I have one of the participants to maybe unmute themselves and share the 2 lines that they've written and what they're thinking they will write?
I've written courage is red as blood.
Okay, so you've written courage is as red as blood. One more response and then
Blood.
Yes, Rashmi wants to share.
As blue as sky.
What is as blue as sky?
Ice.
Ice is as blue as sky. Okay. Imagination is as green as grass. This is from VVSS to everybody. Excellent. I think we're on our way to creating beautiful poems that we're going to remember for a very long time. Choose an object.
Life is green.
Dream is as white as milk. Okay, makes sense. Courage is as blue as still waters. That's a beautiful line. Absolutely loving the creativity that's coming out on the group. We'll move on to the next line of your poem, of our poem that we're building. I can't hear you. I think there's a signal problem. You can
Life
put your response in the chat box. Search is as simple as dewdrop. Okay. All right. So we'll move on to our next slide, which is we'll move on to our next line, and which is about putting just one word in attachment to your word, which is an adjective. So end your poem. So hope is as yellow as sunshine. Hope is, can you think of one word that will summarize your poem together? So it will create a 3-line poem. What are some words do you think I can use to end my poem? Hope is as yellow as sunshine. Hope is, what are some adjectives that you suggest? Okay, hope is eternal and bright. Absolutely. Just one word, yeah. Hope is endless. Okay, hope is done. Hope is infinite. Hope is realistic dream. Hope is vivid, right? So we're all going to end our poems with the third line. So my poem is hope is as yellow as sunshine. And my last line, since you suggested, I will pick up hope is vivid. Similarly, I would love for all of you to end your poems.
Life is green, keep on moving.
Okay.
Life is green.
Yeah.
It goes down like leaves and it starts again as leaves.
Wonderful. Loving that response. Anyone else who wants to share their small poem can go ahead and share it.
Courage is red as blood. Courage is survival.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I hear hope is strength also on the chat. Two of us have already shared our poems. I'd love for one more person to share their poem. It's a 3-line poem, and then we can move to thinking about what are some faculties that we used in creating this poem.
Black as the universe and endless till eternity. Am I audible?
You'll just have to be a little louder. Something is happening.
Okay. Time is black as the universe and endless till eternity.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Somebody has joined me.
Courage is as blue as still waters. Courage is the still small voice that says, try again. Beautiful. From Pranati. All right. We'll move to the next part where we'll start thinking about what are some skills that we used in this exercise. And for that, my first question is, how did this exercise make you feel when you were writing this poem? Okay, happy and content. I also got another new poem. Dream is as blue as sky. I'm a bird. It takes me high, high, high. Love it. Aishwarya says sky is as blue as sea. Sky is endless. So are the possibilities. Love that. Okay, Pranati felt excited as we were doing this poem. What are some things the others were feeling? Somebody was feeling creative, motivated. Excellent. The other thing I want to, imaginative, great. The other thing I want to ask is, what are some skills you think that you used in this process? So first you thought of an emotion, then you thought of a color that you connect with that emotion, then you thought of an object that brings that emotion alive, then you thought of a word or an adjective which will define that emotion. So what skills do you think you were using when you were writing your poem? I'm still getting some responses for the last question about feeling. Stimulated. Okay. VVSS people have shared another poem. Hope is the belief that takes me beyond my strength and limits. Okay. We were using association, language skills, imaginative skills, creativity and communication skills. Great. I love your responses. Creativity and vocabulary skills. We were making connections, we were using cognitive skills, we were recapturing memories, right? And hence, the focus of our work at SOL, or using the arts in education, is to use all of these skills as tools towards better life outcomes, and build all of these skills using the art form. So just in the last 5-6 minutes, we use so many skills to write these 3 lines of our poem, right? We used creativity, we used critical thinking, we thought of what is a color that we can connect to. Some of us thought of collaboration, because I saw that some of your poems were connected to each other, right? We were communicating, we were sharing our thoughts in between, we shared our poems with each other. Similarly, we were thinking about self-regulation, whether I should speak or not at this point of time. We were thinking about things that come under self-esteem, our mental and emotional well-being, while we were doing this exercise. And the idea of doing the exercise was to demonstrate how arts can be used as a very, very powerful tool, just even inside for like the classroom for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, to build all these skills, or to build the social emotional learning in children using an art form. Now my question to you is that what do you think effects like an exercise that we just had can have on classroom culture? And I would love to hear some of your thoughts. Take a moment to think, and then we can either unmute ourselves and share, or we can share it on the chat box. So we did an exercise, and what do you think are some effects that exercises like these can have? 1, on classroom culture, and 2, on overall learning of children. Thank you, Reena, for saying it was a wonderful idea. Yes, it engages our children. I hear that from VVR. Collective ideas, mutual corrections. Okay, the children can bring their ideas together, they can correct each other. A little room required for teacher to reprimand or take control.
Hi, this is Ramya speaking.
Hi, Ramya.
Yeah, I wanted to say this exercise might help children, and I mean, I've also been able to self-reflect with the words that I've chosen and the colors that I, see with those words. So I think that would help kids understand themselves and what others around them, their peers around them, feel about certain words and certain feelings.
Thank you for sharing, Ramya. Absolutely. It's a great tool for self-reflection, and that's what artists from centuries before have been doing, using their art as a mean of self-expression and also sharing that expression then with the world. I hear a lot of responses on the chat. I hear it makes classroom a safe space where everyone feels safe and be himself or herself. Group discussion, recognizing children's style and skill, making children comfortable and confident to stimulate their creativity, peer learning, language, overall learning is self-action or doing, getting new ideas, learning by doing. It would build collaboration as they share their work with each other. The process of creation brings joy to most, and so it would bring them joy, and better learning happens when kids are joyful. That's the most amazing part about arts, because it brings you joy and you learn so much when you're joyful. It removes inhibition, comfortable platform for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing so many of your thoughts. Keep them coming. Self-confidence, learning becomes fun, absolutely. A situation to express ideas. I was thinking that it would be challenging to get people's responses on a webinar, but I just have a storm coming and I'm really liking it. All right, we'll move forward to the next part. And hence, by doing all of this, I think in the last couple of years, we've been able to bring a lot of joy like this to many children. And I think we've seen the results in ways that have surprised us and absolutely made us do more and more of the work that we do. We've worked with about 6,500 children, but more than that, the children have been able to create about 15,000 original pieces of artwork. About 14 of them have been TEDx speakers. They've performed at different stages all over the country, and they performed to a cumulative audience of more than 25,000 people. And that's the kind of effect we've seen come about in children after they've used creative means or creative ways of engaging with the world, like the arts. Before we move into the question and answers, I would love to hear from all of you. What is something that you learned today that you will apply in your classroom, and how? Or apply in your life if you're not a teacher in the classroom.
I would love to like increase and enhance their vocabulary by this simple joyous activity of making little poems, because it will create ripples. It will not just create enhance their vocabulary, but it will also make them creative. So yeah, I mean, this is amazing.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, it motivates you to find different ways of expression. Okay. Surima says she'll explain concepts.
It would enable me to express myself.
Okay. I hear explain concepts by doing and making children. I can't see the entire thing because of some screen issue. By doing and making children do things themselves, maybe inventing small activities and games, absolutely. How to give exposure to vocabulary. Pranati shares, I'm writing a course for Firki, integrating art into your teaching. We'll see if I can use this process of creating a poem within the course for the teachers. Of course, please feel free to get in touch with me for this course. Helping students to reflect and relate. Yeah. How, if I may ask?
Vedaveli school teachers, it would really help us to understand that how will you use this activity to make students reflect and relate to these ideas? You can just use your mic and tell us more about it.
Okay, Reena says games, activities, indoor and outdoor. Okay. VVSS says they would share their individual perspectives. Okay, great. So you can use an art form for children to share their individual perspectives. Like probably they can paint, they can write poems, they can create a play together. All of these would help children to share their individual perspectives. Sometimes even solving a math problem in a very unique way enables children to share their perspectives. Okay, introduce original thinking, associate words with ideas, group work, peer learning, okay, their collective ideas on a common concept. Also think that's a great ideas to create paintings or to create poems or to create plays in the classroom is collecting a jar of ideas from all children and then putting it all together to create one production. All right. So what we'll do right now is we'll take a 5-minute break and we'll actually think about one thing that we're going to, if we are teachers, that we're going to do in the class immediately with our students. So we'll take 5 minutes, we'll come back and we can quickly share about what that idea is going to be.
If anybody's already thought about some of these ideas, that how are you going to engage students to bring out the creative expression that Jigyasa has been talking about, do share it with us. Yeah, Reena, please go ahead.
Take the similar activity, right, regarding writing a poetry. My children are pretty lax and relaxed, about learning literary devices. So what I'll do is I will just give them 3 to 4 or 4 to 5 literary devices of my own choice, and then tell them to write, let's say, 4 lines of poetry, which encompasses all 4 or 5 within its ambit. So this is an activity which is very much similar to yours, but very effective in my class setting. Thank you.
Sure, Ramya. Ramya, I was curious to know that when you are giving those literary devices, are you also taking into consideration, say, the level of students in terms of language and say other areas? So those will also help to know here.
Yes, of course. You have to pay attention to the level of the students as well as their age group. And there, there are some difficult children who are weak and their, level of mastery of the language. You cannot give a very difficult word or something who doesn't really understand the meaning of a literary device. You cannot give it to them. So it depends on the kind of group you choose and to their level, age group, as well as their language level. We're going to choose they're going to make a choice of the literary device which we're going to give. But not many, because then that's going to increase the burden of the poetry. Thank you. Hello.
Sure. Thanks. Makes sense. Thank you, Reena, for sharing.
My pleasure.
So, Vedavedi school teachers have also mentioned something in the chat window. They say that every day's class will be started with the motivation session in writing 3-line poems or different words completely. I think it's very difficult to get into these activities for a longer period of time. And I think taking small steps always is a good thing. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I also just wanted to quickly add something. I think the idea of this poem, and it's only 3 lines from the poem, so the poem can extend even further. The children can be then made to think about what are some sounds which they connect, with their word. What are some actions or feelings which they connect with their word, and so the poem can go so on and so forth. But the idea of introducing a structure in art is only to handhold children in the beginning, the way I did for the workshop. And the idea was all of us to expand our creative confidence a little bit. Because creativity also means taking a lot of risks, and all of you took these risks in writing the poem that you wrote. So the idea of introducing a structure in the beginning for you to be able to write the poem existed, so that all of us can have a support for creative confidence. All of us could have the support in which we could take a risk as someone who is being creative, as someone who's creating a work of art. And you can create similar structures for your kids to get an introduction into an art form, and then foray them slowly and steadily into exploring the art form themselves. But it is completely up to the level of readiness of your children, you yourself, how you want to expose them to a specific art form, and how do you want to take it from there.
Jigyasa, it would be great to see how the voice component can be part of the poems that we've created. If you can give a few examples and sort of help us understand that.
Absolutely. So the poem that you wrote, while a lot of people may have chosen the same word, the poem will become different because it will have an element of your belief, your ideas, your voice in it. And for a lot of people, the idea of voice is very tied to the idea of individuality. The idea of voice is very tied to the idea of what is important to them. And the idea of voice is also tied to the idea of what do we want to share as people. And hence, if you look at 2 children, let's say both of them took hope, but both of their poems can look different. For example, a lot of you suggested as a color for hope blue, some of you suggested green. And let's say even if someone chose 2 people choose blue, but one could say that hope is as blue as the sky, and one could say hope is as blue as the ocean. And that's where the difference of the voice starts to come in. And that is the magic with the arts. When we're consuming content, when we're watching a movie, even sometimes when we're looking at somebody else's art, we're seeing what the other person wants us to see, and it is their voice in that piece of art. But when we create our own work of art, for example, when you created this poem, it had your own voice, it had your own beliefs in it, it had your own idea of what color does hope look like and what object brings that color alive. Similarly, whatever opportunities that we create for our children in classrooms to explore the art, it is very imperative that the idea of their voice and their beliefs, their feelings, their thoughts, their aspirations coming out in the piece of art that they're creating becomes something that we keep at the center. That the piece of art should be about them and their voice. I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, I've just shared like so I've associated a sound with the poem that you earlier shared, and I was thinking if other people thought of similar things. So, for example, hope is as yellow as a sunshine, like a wind chime in the wind. So I was thinking like what other people thought about their poems. Maybe we can hear some of those responses as well.
Absolutely.
Like associating a sound with your poem.
I think engagement can be bring by starting the session or class with games and activities.
What kind of games or activities are you thinking about?
You can start with some icebreaker by playing some games.
Yeah. Or we can also start with a lot of theater games to kind of pull the energy up in the class. Sometimes we can do a lot of name games also between people. I'm happy to show you a version. We need at least 3 or 4 people to kind of play this very small name game, which we can also play over a webinar.
Sure. I want to see.
Sure. Yeah, I will need someone, like one more volunteer to come on board apart from you.
Jigyasa, I'll go.
Okay, great. So in this name game, the idea is for children to form beats using their names. So we'll clap our hands and we will say our name and the name of the person next to us. So this is Jigyasa, Narpat, and this is Ekta, right? So what we have to say, Jigyasa, Jigyasa, Narpat, Narpat. Right? Very simple. Then the next person has to say, the Narpat has to say, Narpat, Narpat, Ekta, Ekta. Ekta will say,
Ekta, Ekta, Jigyasa, Jigyasa.
See, very, very easy, strong way to start your class with an energizer. It's also a theater game of names. We can try playing it and more people can also see how to do it. Ready?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Jigyasa, Jigyasa, Narpat, Narpat.
Narpat, Narpat, Ekta, Ekta.
Ekta, Ekta, Jigyasa, Jigyasa.
Anyone else who wants to join? It just takes too much time to come online, no? That's all right.
Okay.
So that's just one theater game, and you'll get so many theater games if you look out on the internet, which you can use to begin your classrooms. And this game is especially useful when children in a class are new to each other, or there is a new child in the classroom and you want everybody to remember that child's name. So through the game, you can bring the art of theater in 5 minutes into your classroom.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for asking. I also hear a couple of few more responses. So it says that let the kids talk about their favorite things, memories, or people in their life. Use these favorites to associate with adjectives, phrases, emotions to create poetry. This gives kids a sense of control over their work. Absolutely. If we're able to connect children's artworks to the things or people or experiences that they experience in their everyday life, that piece of art becomes very, very personal to them. And then again, it's very direct correlation of voice. Then there is from Reena, we can let them dramatize a given word. absolutely. I think when we're working with children on being able to perform their poem, so writing a poem is very different from being able to perform their poem. And if children are able to learn some techniques in doing that, one of which is dramatizing the words, adding elements of drama into your performance of poetry, that brings kind of theater and poetry together. So that's also something very, very doable. I think great idea in the classroom. Another amazing idea from VVSS got me really excited. Convert a poem into a narrative that can be enacted and bringing the plot and the settings alive. I think beautiful idea. Yeah, we can completely change a poem into a narrative. A lot of narratives are changed into poems by a lot of people, but the opposite can also be done. A poem can be picked. Hope can be picked. Somebody can become hope. Somebody can become sunshine to depict it. And it can be brought alive. We are open now for Q&A. Okay, great.
So please feel free to type in your questions, or you can just use your mic, to voice any questions that you have for Jigyasa.
Jigyasa, you mentioned at the beginning that generally after you all finish working with a batch of kids, you sort of monitor what impact you guys have had. So what are the kind of indicators you all are looking at when you all are monitoring your impact?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that question. As of now, one of the things that we use is a life skill assessment rubric on which we judge how kids have fared on the skills of communication, critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and how they're improving as opposed to how they were at the beginning of the program. The other thing that we're trying to do is to measure children against some arts learning outcomes which have been prescribed by the National Curriculum Framework. So there are already tools that exist that help us in monitoring and evaluating where our children are with respect to learning the arts. You're welcome.
Jigyasa, you did mention about the fellowship as well initially in your introduction.
Yes.
And I mean, is it like a paid fellowship, or how does it work? Like, I mean, are people fellows like Teach for India? How does the fellowship work? Maybe a little more detail about it.
Yes. So the fellowship, like I shared earlier, it's a 5-year intervention, and it has a relay model of one artist coming in per year. We offer the artists a very small stipend per class, and which kind of covers their cost, especially around transport. But the fellowship's commitment is only commitment of weekends or for commitments of like about 12 hours in a month. So that's how the commitment looks like. It's not a full-time commitment, because a lot of artists that we work with are professional artists in their everyday lives, and teaching is not something that they do full-time.
Sure, thank you.
Is poetry madness or a bit of truth? A philosophical question I got. I'm unsure if I'm the suitable person to answer that, but I think it's both. Yeah. There's this beautiful story about how poetry is the beauty which hides what is not great to look at in the truth. So I would call it that.
There was also a question by Vedavali school teachers that do you have some theater ideas to take to the classroom?
A lot of theater ideas. The only unfortunate part with a webinar is that explaining a lot of theater stuff on a webinar is very, very difficult because theater is very, very physical. One very quick idea which I can give you is it's called the burning ball in theater. It's a game idea that all children get into a circle, and then the teacher becomes the narrator, and the teacher tells what shape or size the ball is taking. So there's a ball. So imagine this ball is very, very small. So this person takes the small ball, and now this ball is burning. So now the next person who catches the ball acts like it's burning, and then the teacher can do that storytelling of now the ball is so big you can't lift it, so the kid goes like being crushed under the weight. So that's one game you can take to your class. But if you Google theater games, you will get so many theater games, and even the name game that we played, that's also one of the theater games you can take directly back into your classroom. Not just for children like memorizing their own names, but also for maybe memorizing if they have to memorize something, maybe something around a theater game which is about clapping can be done.
Sure, thank you. We have a question from Minna, and she says that, do you have lesson plans prepared for the hand-holding period you mentioned earlier, when kids are just starting to learn to create their own poems?
Yeah, so lesson plans are created through the period, whether the children are in hand-holding period or they are in a later stage. We believe that our artists should go into the classrooms very, very prepared. It says, and something we kept hearing at TFI, if you don't have a plan for your children will have a plan for you. And you don't want to have them to have a plan for you. So the artists create their plans. We help them through our frameworks, which talk about what are the skills that we are wanting to build in children, and what are some ways we can build it. But the overall plan is designed by the artist, and we support the artist in designing the plans.
There's a message that Vedavali school teachers just sent me, is that how must poetry be read to the children?
How must poetry be read to the children?
Yes.
Excellent question. Again, one of the ways that poetry can be read to children is by children doing the readings themselves. After you expose them to any other poem through dramatic readings. The other way is also to show them a lot of spoken word performances online, because how spoken word poetry and poetry become different is spoken word poetry is poetry that no longer wants to remain on paper. It kind of lifts itself up from paper and becomes a performance. So when you turn your poem into a performance, that's what spoken word poetry can look like. And that's the potential it has. So when you ask me that how they must be read out to children, if you can learn it, or if any other child can learn it and perform it to the best of their potential, then it becomes a performance which all others can also enjoy and connect better to. So I think just using elements of theater and drama a lot more in poems can give them a very, very strong and powerful vibe.
Sure. I think there have been 2 questions around if you can share a few links that people can use in their classroom, like which have a lot of activities, through the email that we send after the webinar. Jigyasa, are you with us? Okay, we've just lost her at the moment. She'll just try joining back in. In the meantime, please keep your questions coming. It's nice to hear from all of you. We're just trying to get Jigyasa back on the call. In the meantime, please keep your questions coming. Thank you. Thank you, Madhya. Hope you've had the time to fill up the feedback form as well. It'd be nice to hear your feedback on the webinar. Thank you.
Lost the connection somehow.
Welcome back, Jigyasa. We have like a ton of questions while you were gone. One is from Reena. What reflective tools do you use for such activities, and how?
Yeah. I think the activities in themselves are reflective tools. So if you think about children using a word and writing a poem about it by connecting it to things that they see around them, that is a tool. But if you are thinking of tools which are even smaller, which can be put into classrooms all the time, we use a lot of tools like, so a question like, before this I was feeling something, and after this something else. And a before and after question is a very, very strong tool which allows reflection. Another tool that I've used a lot in classrooms is called a start stop pause tool, where children, after going through an experience, start thinking about what are something they're going to start, what are something they're going to stop, and what is a question that they have. So that, and I told you about the I used to think and now I think tool that also kind of shows the shifts. Uh, Another tool that I've used a lot is called headlines. If children had to put their experience into a headline, what would that headline look like? Or if and this can be used not only after an art class, but after any kind of class or before any kind of class, to know how the kids are feeling or where they're at in this point. So headlines is also another tool. Yes, peer feedback at the end of games can also be another tool for children's reflection.
Jigyasa, would it be possible also to maybe type some of these activities that you're suggesting?
Yes.
Maybe we can share it with the audience after the webinar as well, because we have their email IDs that they registered from. We can definitely share with them later as well.
Sure.
Thank you. There's another question by Vedavali teachers that how do we understand emotions in poetry and exhibit them?
I think the pressure of understanding emotions or feelings in a poem or any work of art should not only be upon the teachers, because the responsibility or it is to each person. And what a lot of us do in our classroom sometimes is we take a work of art and then we sit around it, the teachers and children, they all come to an equal level and all of them share what they feel about it, what are their views about it. And I once remember this incident where we had shared a painting which was very red and seemed like the painting of an eye, to an entire class, and children were also there and adults were also there, and a lot of adults talked about Marxism. Some adults started talking about this looks like an eye, and some children were saying that this is about passion, but it was just a splatter of paints by a 5-year-old. And hence like I think that pressure needs to be taken off us of correctly evaluating art, because there is nothing of that sort. Art is made for all of us to feel in some way, and sometimes to feel differently about the same thing. So I think there's no pressure about understanding emotions in poetry and an exhibit. Like everyone can go through the experience of trying to understand it together. That also makes the children feel one, that the teacher is really vulnerable, and second, it creates an equal level playing field where the contributions of teacher are as valid as the contributions of the students.
I have a hand raised by Pradeep Kumar Jain. So if you would like to share your question or comment, please use the mic. Just unmute yourself if you can hear me.
I would like to say that this has been the first program of Firki, and I really liked it. So I would like to understand if once we have a final training at our Pune Institute, will this also be a part of the training, or this is a separate identity?
Right now, it's a separate identity.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's really good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jigyasa, is there a website for Slam Out Loud that we can share the link within the chat window as well, if people want to know more about it? Thank you.
it is, wait, I will quickly share my screen with you so that you also get to okay, these are some of the kids that was what I was supposed to end with. And yeah, so here you will get the details. We are on slamoutloud.com. You can find us on social media. This is my email ID.
Also, Prerna has a question that does slam poetry have a certain kind of language or style, or is it free flowing?
So slam poetry is different from spoken word poetry because the concept of slam poetry came for poetry to be in competition. So when you say slam poetry, it means poetry written for competition in spoken word poetry. And hence, the theme of slam poetry or the theme of spoken word poetry made for competition is different at different places, depends on who's organizing it. And if it is organized by someone in Hindi, then it is Hindi slam poetry. If it is organized by someone in Marathi, then it's Marathi slam poetry. So it doesn't have to be in any specific language. Completely depends on who's organizing it. Slam poetry is spoken word poetry for performance.
Also, if you YouTube search slam poetry, you'll find various kinds of videos of children as well as adults, showcasing their slam out poetries. And that's one way to sort of acquaint yourself with this style of poetry as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I think we can bring the webinar to an end. Jigyasa, if you would like to share your thoughts, how do you feel about it? Is there anything else that you want to mention to the participants? Otherwise, we'll just end the webinar here. Thank you.
I'm just grateful all of you joined and stayed for so long. I think it was a lovely experience for me to do a webinar and share this. I never, it was a little difficult. Yeah, I'm very, very happy to receive any kind of feedback that will help me to do a webinar if I do it again better. And feel free to reach out to me and give me feedback. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Jigyasa. And we've also shared the feedback link in the chat window as well. Prerna will paste that again. And continue to keep looking for our webinars that we keep posting on our website, as well as we'll keep sending you the links of the forthcoming webinars if you've registered with us now. Thank you so much, and do try to use these in your classroom as well. Have a lovely evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.